So welcome in, gentlemen. I mean, when I was looking at this panel, I was like, geez, these are like my daddies in the industry. And I was like, how are we going to do this? So um, El Dorado, the city of gold, people died searching for because they believed prosperity was something you find. Nollywood wasn't found, right? Afrobeat wasn't found. Fintech wasn't found. They were all built. So today we are not hunting for hidden gold. We are working through what it actually takes to build a games industry. Piece by piece, the talent, the studios, the funding, the money. And we have 4 people in the room today who have each built a part of the answer. And one line each first. Please, can you introduce yourself again and tell us what you do, so that we all know you?
Hi everyone, thanks for being here. My name is Timi Afolabi. I'm the Global Expansion Lead for Africa and the Middle East at Xbox. And primarily what I do is I look for games from regions, from local developers, and try and get them signed and released on our platform. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Olusegun Alimi is my name. I work with GIZ, and I'm the project manager for ICT skills for youth employment. So what I do is to support young people with inclusive and dignified pathways from skills to employment. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mbotsidam Johnson. I'm the CEO and founder of Basement Animation Studio. Also, I'm a trustee in Animation Nigeria, which has been established as the association and body for the animation industry.
And hi, my name is Hugo Obi. I'm the founder of Malio Games. We're a mobile games development studio based here in Lagos. We also run a talent accelerator called Game Up Africa, and we convene a conference called MalioCon once a year.
Yeah.
I think that the challenges that we had 5 years ago, we no longer have, and I'm really grateful for that. What was the challenge 5 years ago? 5 years ago, if you wanted to become a game developer, you essentially had to go on YouTube and just figure it out. One of the big challenges with that, obviously YouTube is a great platform. Udemy and the likes are great platforms. But what the challenge with that is that you were learning in isolation. So there was no guidance, there was no structure, there were no very little connections. And like most people, you start going down that rabbit hole, one content list, another content list, another content, and eventually you get, exhausted, and then you just abandon it, right? So that desire never quite follows through. So what we did with Game of Africa was to create a 5-month structured foundational program that enabled you to come in, go through learning, mentoring, projects, but also not just do it by yourself, do it with other people. And not only were you doing it with other people, you were doing it with other people across the continent. We had a very well-defined selection process. We had global mentors. We're able to evaluate and give feedback. And people, the completion rate was very good. The progression rate was very good. And then there were also jobs at the end of that journey where people had the opportunity to come and intern at our studio, to work on projects and be able to then create a portfolio and be able to showcase that to potential employers. That didn't exist prior. And I think being able to run that program over a 5-year period up to now, so the Game Up Africa platform, it still exists, and now I can speak about what the next iteration of Game Up Africa is, but that also gives people confidence. Because a lot of time when if we want to use the word intervention, what tends to happen is that the programs kickstart and then they dissipate, they disappear, right? So people don't have trust in the system that this is, institutions don't disappear, That's why people trust or are meant to trust institutions. So we built the program with a long-term view. We built it to solve our pain point, which was the ability to find great talent. And today, I am really excited, I'm really proud of the wide variety of talent that does exist in the market today. And I think what is meaningful is that any of the folks in the audience today who maybe want to start their journey in game development, they can come to you, they can come to me, they can go to Temi, and they can point them somewhere. They can say, here's the pathway. This is, go to Lagos Games Week, go and join Game of Africa. This studio does internships. That did not exist 5 years ago, right? So whether you're a university student, you're a graduate, you're a secondary school student, those pathways exist. What was the second part of the question?
Yes, so do we still have a talent problem?
No, I answered that bit, yeah.
All right, thank you so much for that, Igo. So to Umbi, right, to follow up on that, animation is a similar adjacent to gaming. And I mean, you guys, should I say you have existed before gaming came into the Nigerian space. And you guys have faced, similar challenges. So, as a studio and a key figure in the animation space, how have you solved some of these, talent-related problems?
I think it's still ongoing, and because there's existing talent in the industry, but the talent can only solve a certain kind of problem. Our industry is, I always look at our industry as manufacturing, and I always use this term whenever I'm speaking to my team. If we can make a very good bread in the kitchen, but we can't supply to everybody, then we are running into a problem. No matter how sweet it is, how many can we make? So the talent that we do have, which is excellent, because the talent that we have is already servicing even the international markets. We can see the talent is on international projects, but we don't have enough talent to scale up to do long-form production. The talent that is existing can service the advertising industry, which they've been doing that for over maybe 3 decades. Because the way I always look at it is like this is the third generation of animation that has been trying to exist. It's just that I came from the second generation. The first generation left the industry. The second generation, some of us spilled off into the third generation. The third generation approached it differently because the studio form model wasn't working at that point in time, where you actually have studios that have teams that are collaborating together and they can do long-form production. When I say long-form production, that's TV series, feature films. We didn't have that. But this third generation really just focused on freelance work, which they played a very good part because they established Nigeria in the market. When you say a talent, they'll say, okay, look for another talent within Nigeria. But I think we still have that gap on when we need to scale up the talent pool to expand to do long form. Because when I use the analogy of the bread, no matter how sweet that bread is, either I'm breaking it for Obama, I'm selling $50,000 or something. But if I still want to sell bread at the rate of 2,000, then I need to make over 100,000 pieces. And that requires a structure that is not the same as doing a 60 seconds advertising project of 40 seconds. So I think there's room for scaling up the talent, just having more people. But in the sense, is the quality of skill existing? Definitely, I think is existing in the industry.
All right, thank you so much for that. I mean, we'll come to the question of scaling up, development. So to Mr. Shegun, I mean, developing talent is your daily work, right? What are the real limiting factors that exist, and what actually works? And also, the hard one, for any young person, like what are those challenges that a young person coming into an industry like games would face? And, what marks as experience, for someone who is just starting out? Like, what should they look at? What should they leverage?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that question. So, like, the people who are sat here, I'm not an expert in gaming, but it's it's a sector, an industry that I find very interesting, because when we set out for the ICT skills for youth employment, we're looking to equip young people with labor market relevant ICT skills for employment locally and globally. However, in terms of research and engaging, we began to see this industry called gaming. I'm like, okay, what's happening here? So which is why I'm always fascinated to be in these settings, because I keep seeing more and more, learning more and more about what gaming has to offer. So I would speak from experience in the work that we have done. A couple of things that we have learned, right, in terms of doing our field research engagements and things of that nature, is that the skills required for gaming are very intersectional in nature. Because we have other topics we're working on: artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, software development, and all these things are very important to gaming. And today I'm learning again, there's gaming economics, virtual world economics, all those things. I find it very, very interesting. It shows that there is the opportunity to build skill on a huge scale to serve people. So like myself, and what have we done in that case? We can train young people, which we will do. Fair enough, that is good. But instead, we're also looking, how can we strengthen the systems that support these young people? We're looking at studios and things like that. How can we strengthen those systems? Because if you train 100 people, 50 people and things like that, they either get waged employment or they start up on their own. But how can we set up these structures, support game studios to have systems whereby the talent demand continues to increase? Because if there is no demand, if these studios are not commercially viable, if you're not making money, even though I work in development where we look beyond the return on investment, we look at the social sustainable return on investment, and saying, how are you creating impact, influence? How are you including people? Those things are very important, but it's also important to have those structures for sustenance. So those are things we're looking at. Then when we now center onto the young people, like myself, I always say something: if you want to get into anything, so I've approached learning about gaming as a topic with a lot of curiosity. So what I would encourage anybody who wants to come into the gaming sector, who wants to, in different adjacents of what it can be, right, is first of all, you need to be curious. But secondly, you need to be committed to learning. So I'm always attending these events now. I'm studying, getting to know people, getting to know things, and it's very interesting. Then after commitment, you need to build competence. That's very, very critical. After you've built competence, they say competence will get you into the room. You need to have character. And to wrap it all up, it's very important to be confident. In Hugo's speech, he says, show up. So it's very, very important to always show up confidently and contribute to all the discussions. And that way, you can get in, you can make impact, you can make income, and you can make influence. Thank you very much.
Yeah, just to add to something, what I said earlier, in the context of addressing the talent problem. So initially, when we set up our studio, that was around 2011. I think we were just like 3 or 4 as a small team. Then we set up like a small training program because we were trying to explore the fact that we wanted to try to do long form production. We did the training. We had like probably 2 people that showed up. 1 person came from Port Harcourt, and they paid for the training. It was a paid training. But after that training, I sat down, I started thinking about it, like, if we do train people, what do they do with the training? Is it money for just us as a studio, or is it more of it translates to something as a job, then it translates to production, then it becomes something that is valuable to us and also the students? So I stopped doing training. I was never big on training because I understood that there was a problem already. No matter how many people I train, a lot of people were big on training because it was a model to make money, to sustain the studio. But my eyes was really on the fact that if I was going to do training, I wanted to move to production. Yes, I wanted to go beyond that. So last year, we did our first technical training in years. And we were very, very specific on how we wanted our training to be one. We wanted, because then in 2012, when we did that training, we noticed that there were a lot of people from outside Lagos that wanted to come for the training. They can't come to Lagos. So we made sure we did the training. It was more of like a self-paced training where you have an instructor and you can do the training from anywhere in the country. We recorded over like 120 videos, set up a whole curriculum online, and it was like a test model for us to see if we can train people remotely, get them to work and collaborate remotely, and see if their skills will actually hit a level point where they are employable, where you can bring them straight into production. We did it for 2 cohorts, 40 people, the total of 30 ladies and 10 guys. We're really focused. Our students were very big on having women in the industry. And after that training, I think we had like a percentage of probably 5 people that dropped out from the 40 people. We had, from the remaining 35, we had probably around 12 ready talented people, because we actually moved those 12 people and did a test project. So it was like a test project to put them and engage them in the pipeline of a production. Then the other people, I'll say they needed more of internship to move to the next level. But just starting from scratch of 6 months training and saying they could get a job, we had 12 people. So we were happy with that because that was a big win. We tested a project December last year, and I was impressed. Because when I say I was impressed, because I'll say even in the history of all the work we had done, this was the best project that we've had from our studio. Hands down. 12, and out of the 12 we had 10 ladies and 2 guys. And we had, I say it with confidence, and it was with joy, because our instructor, our head of animation, was happy. Like when we finished the project and we saw what the students could do, we were happy because, not just because of the 12, but because we have a model that we can repeat. Because the important thing is that I have the perspective of how we can expand the industry, but we can't expect every studio to train. It's difficult for people to have that model while you train and you also engage in service work. Sometimes the people that need to train are the best for the service work. So you always meet that problem. So we built our academy to focus on how we can keep doing trainings, and we also partner with some studios existing that want to employ from that same teams. So that's just an example of how we address the issue.
Wow. I mean, that's amazing. So I want to pick up from what you said, going beyond trainings. And we are coming to studio development and scaling. You are always scouting for studios and looking at what they are building. So for a kind of studio that, for an ideal studio that Xbox will support, what specifically are you looking for in such a studio?
Thank you, David. That's a very open-ended question. I think studios we support go from AAA studios that make the biggest games in the world to indie studios that are making their very first game. So I think the things we look for, one, how good is your idea? Like, when we see it, the trailer, we see the concept, do we think people will want to play this? 2, how competent is your team? And I think this is like any business or any industry. You come with an idea, we say, okay, yeah, this is a good idea. Why do you think you can execute this idea? So how experienced is your team? What have you guys worked on before? Where are you guys located? So on and so forth. Is there a market for this game? Are there similar games? Do they do well? Do we think your game can compete with these games? So what is your vision for the game? Have you segmented your market? So I think when studios come to us, it's almost like, even though this is a creative industry, it's still a business. So it's almost like going to get a loan from a bank. We're going to ask you similar questions. It's just that the product is different. We're going to ask you, how good is this? Does this work? Have you tested it? What is the market feedback? And so on and so forth. And the more questions you can answer, the better it is. When we first started looking for studios on the continent, the first problem I had was a lot of the pitches I got were just really bad. From the fonts not aligning, font size, to reading a whole deck and still not understanding the point or what the person wanted. But then I realized very quickly, as soon as we started supporting studios and people realized, oh, there's a real opportunity here, they quickly organized themselves and started making really good pitches. And now I see very good pitches every day from across Africa and across the world. So I think the main thing we look for in a studio is, are you guys taking this seriously? Do you see it as a business? do you come across as people we can trust to execute when we support you? And then after that too, at the end of the day, it's a creative industry. So your idea might just be so good that we just think, one way or the other, we need to get this game in front of people because it's going to make a fortune. So yeah, those are some of the things.
Well, thank you so much for that. Picking from what you said, like, a game is still, a game studio is still a business, even though it's a creative endeavor. So coming to Hugo, right? We've had Game of Africa, we've had, Kucheza, Africa Comicade, and even my studio Dimension 11. They have sort of produced, they have trained talent, because in Dimension 11, for instance, we do it through internship, right? Within our communities, we bring in, new talents, and then we train them by internships. And some of them even go on to become junior and even senior developers. So, Hugo, we still have very few structured studios, right? And structure is a big deal in the games industry. So why don't we have like scalable pipelines that exist in this industry to actually have more structured studios, except for the few that I've mentioned already? And what do you think we can do to get there? And why does it feel like so hard right now to do?
Yeah, no, thank you very much for that question. I mean, like, it's like Rome wasn't built in a day. Let's start with that. And I don't think like you're gonna create a miracle by putting someone through like a 6 months training program. It takes years to be able to kind of like, evolve talent. I think the key ingredients are there. So you sort of like have the raw, like ambition, enthusiasm, in some cases technical ability. You then have people who go in there and put in the work, and they learn the foundational skills. But the learning never ends. The learning is continuous. We talked about the wide range of skills required in making games, which means that, to be able to, game production is a fusion of like art and engineering. The cross-functional nature of the skills required to make games means that it's not just easy to build pipeline and process if you do not have, certain types of non-technical skills, so professional skills. I think it's a journey, one that requires a level of expertise and experience. So I think like that's still lacking. So what we do have today is foundational knowledge and foundational skills. We have people who are talented but not experienced. If you go to conferences like GDC or to Gamescom, the average age of the people who are at those conferences is 40, 44, 45. That's the average age. The average years of experience of the people in those conferences is like 20. You've been to, right? Like in our market, the average age is what, 20, 21, right? 21, 20. The average years of experience in the industry is less than three? Yeah, average, if you look at it, average. But most people are like 5 years, 6 years, right? So yes, you can have raw talent, but people have been doing this thing for decades, and they've built that understanding. You also have, like people coming in from other industries, so being able to tap into people who are working in banking or fintech, bringing in people who have other areas of expertise, so people who work in consulting, for instance. Being able to pull together an advisory board. I talked about the cost of running a studio is pretty expensive, because if you think about what a studio really does, what a studio actually does, a studio's work is R&D. Yeah? You're spending 2-3 years developing a product before you can then take that product to market. If that product doesn't resonate very well with the market, you start all over again, right? Like who's funding that R&D? How are you funding that R&D, right? And the skills required. So, like it's not like music where we can go on stage and get people to pay for tickets, and then we can keep the lights on. Like where we can get invited to perform at the birthday party, right? It's not like that. Because also in music, it is still a little bit of R&D, right? You have to have the talent, you have to do a lot of like practice, right? Before you can then come out, right? And music is natural. Music is very local. Yeah? Gaming is not. So I think like those, you can design basic structures, but again, that's the next phase of the iteration of the training. Is wanting to train somebody on practical skills required to make games is a completely different thing to train somebody on what a studio structure looks like. Like some of that is just based on people being in a privileged position. If you've had the opportunity, you and I spoke about this last year, if you have the opportunity to go for an international conference and you can even spend 1 week or 3 days at a studio abroad, you learn so much about how studios are organized, how production is organized, right? And you can bring that home and apply it. If you've never seen it firsthand, that's the equivalent of trying to build a car by reading the manual.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Sorry,
for that.
David.
Okay.
I wanted to add something to my initial answer about the sort of studios we look for, because I also want people to know, I think people have this misconception that you need to be a big studio and have 5 floors and 10 developers. No, there's someone here, I don't know if Tade is here, but there's solo devs in Nigeria that we support and we have funded games for. And then even the Dimension 11 team, we met them, they were university students that started a project together. So I say that to say that anyone here, if you have the talents and the skills and the time and patience, or you have a group of people that are willing to do it with you, you guys here can start a studio and make a game, and in the next, I don't know, year or 2, you might get signed by a platform like Xbox or something. But I don't want people to go away thinking, I need $100,000 or $500,000 to start. No, you literally need a laptop and people willing to support you.
I would add to that as well. You don't need a team of 5 people to start a studio. You can start on your own. As an individual, you can deliver a game. And most projects that we work on is with small teams of 2 people, mostly. You don't need an office to start a studio. But from an evolution standpoint, it's just like a child. You learn to stand, you learn to crawl, you learn to walk, you learn to run, and then the sky is your limit. I think for an industry, if you want to be recognized, if you want to be acknowledged, you have to get out of your diapers at some point.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Hugo. We're running out of time. So, coming to conversation around funding, Mr. Shegun. So, before we talk about chasing investors' money, right? How can young talents, prepare themselves, right, to be very attractive, right, for funding and investment opportunities?
Okay, thank you. So, like Temi was saying, when they're reviewing applications, it's the same way when a bank is reviewing your applications, right? So businesses, core businesses, capitalism, you want to know what is the bottom line? Simple. Like I was saying, we want to know that, but want to know other things also, because we invest, in terms of international development, the work that we do, we are looking at the sustainable social return on investment. So how can the investment you get as an institution, how can you pay it forward? You have strong systems, structures in place. How are you training people, the next talents? How are you creating access for people and things like that? So that is very, very important. But beyond that, because sustainability, being an operative word there, we want to understand that, is this business sustainable? From the gaming perspective, a lot of the times, we've heard it over and over again, we just focus on the technical side of gaming, but there's the business side of gaming. we've now seen access to market, access to knowledge, access to resources, the bookkeeping, entrepreneurship, things like that. That's very important. And from engagement, I've seen that that is clearly lacking. Because when people look at gaming, and which is a very interesting thing, and I think, doing development work, there is a level of passion that is always involved, I would say. And I see it's similar to gaming, because when a lot of people want to do gaming and everything, there's a certain level of passion that comes with it. It's either from playing games to now discovering, I can start up a studio, I can do this and that. However, you need to take a step back, right? Because passion will not pay the bills. And after some time, motivation is not sustainable. To now say, how can this business, because regardless of the type of funding you're receiving, equity, venture capital, loan, debt, whatever it is, everybody wants to know that, will this business be around, or we also want to know that, will you be able to include people? Will persons with typically excluded groups of people, persons with disabilities, women, would you include them? We want to also know that, not just will you make money, right? And will you be able to create jobs for people? So those are the things we look at. So which is why at the core, you cannot take away the place of an inclusive business model. So that is something that is very, very fundamental. And I would encourage us, as we're thinking of going into gaming and everything, we should see it from the fun side of it, because gaming without fun is nothing really. But also we should understand that gaming, as playful as it is serious business. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Let's clap. Yeah, thanks so much for that one. So as we round up the conversation, I want to bring the final topic, which is publishing and distribution, right? For Umbi, right, in the animation space, right, the same problem we have around distribution also exists in gaming. How do we sell our product, right, to build a sustainable business? Piracy is a thing. I mean, my friend was still telling me that when my game ships, he's waiting for the cracked version, right? So these problems exist. So, I mean, you have been in the animation business for quite a while. So have you been able to sustain your business with all of these problems?
I think for distribution, when we set out in 2016, we did our first pilots. I wanted to go to international markets like the big ones, but access was a problem. So I went to the first market, which was in South Africa. Then I first looked for the local market that we could find in the continent, which was Discop. I had one goal: go to the market, get a distribution deal, come back. We did a pilot episode in 4 months or 5 months. We're a team of 4 people, went to the market. I got a deal, but I didn't like the deal. That was the only problem. And that was a model that I was sure that if I go back the next time with better understanding, I was more on the creative side. That was another problem. And I didn't understand business of animation so much. So I went back and I figured out more things on how to approach it. The only problem when it comes to a distribution deal is that it's either you're just bringing your IP and it's dependent on, can you actually produce in a specific period of time? They'll always ask that question. So you have this great idea, we like the pilot, so can you give it to us in the next 12 months? And you're looking at, we have 4 people, that seems like 6-8 years. So I figured out that was another problem. So I went back without focusing on building IP, but more of building structure, building teams, doing a lot of service work in that same industry where we were servicing people that were doing long form, using that as a model to learn how to do things and structure better. Even as while we're doing that, I didn't want to copy exactly what it is. I wanted to be sure that it will work, what will work for us, especially we have different perspectives, we have different styles of what we do, different things. So another thing, again, I also figured out is going to international markets where you can find distributors that like your project and they want to distribute, blah, 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 blah. But the point is, the market now is falling apart. There's nothing that is really happening in the industry. People are not buying projects, people are not commissioning, companies are merging. So there's a big gap on how you can actually exploit a project. So I sat down, this was like 2 years ago, I sat down, I thought about how we can find other markets or other mediums to sell without actually having gatekeepers or problems, which the most popular one is YouTube. And we've seen how skit makers have made money from YouTube over the years. And not just even just in Nigeria, I've seen other projects that have been successful on YouTube. Like a very popular one, like on Monday, during the weekend, got picked up by Disney. Started during the pandemic, presently has 6 million subscribers. The crazy thing about it is a father, wife, and child. Animated content. The other crazy thing is produced in Nigeria, in Abuja. And now that project makes over 250 grand a month from YouTube. Now they've been picked up as a project. The popular project, Grace's Corner, I'm sure some of us would have come across it. But it was a small project that has found its way to get on a big platform, but was already sustainable by itself. So I think for me, the model, there are different ways to get it, but for me, the model I see is try a platform that you can make money from, extend that to other places like broadcasting and streaming platforms, that when they see the success you have, then you can build on that. I think that's, for me, is rather than chasing people up and down. I like to figure things out myself. So I think that's a model that we've been doing for the last 2 to 3 years. Building, we have like 3-4 IPs that we're building. That's why we did our training, expanding our team. We want to extend our expansion of our team to 50 more people, have a specific location, bring people in this time. We want to try the 2 models because we tried it remotely. We also want to try it physically. We've tested the physical one because we've had people come into the studio and we've seen that the 6 months training period was squeezed into 3 months because they were interacting with people. So we want to try the second model and expand our production team and now actually focus on scaling up to do as much as 100 minutes of content a month on YouTube.
Wow, that's a great ambition. Well, thank you so much for that. So to wrap up that topic, Timmy, Xbox is one of the biggest publishers in the world, right? So what channels does Xbox offer for developers in this part of the world to publish and distribute their games?
Oh, thanks for asking. So we have 2 programs primarily that do this. One is called ID at Xbox, independent developer at Xbox. And the idea behind this is that you should be able to self-publish on our platform without having to sign a deal with a publisher. So you can literally go to xbox.com/ID and go through the application process yourself. And if your concept is approved, we'll work with you to release your game. We also have a developer acceleration program, which is a subsidiary of the Idea at Xbox program. And under this program, we fund porting and prototypes. So if you have a game you're working on or that's already ready, and we think it will be a good fit for our platform, you can apply for that, and we give you funding, and it's non-recoupable funding. So you release the game, you get the funding, the money is yours. It comes out on the platform, and then we split the proceeds after that. But the initial funds given to you are yours to keep to use on porting and prototyping. So yeah, that's just one of and like I said, we've signed dozens of games from the African continent now. I think in my first year, we thought we would struggle to find games that met the quality bar, but we've been pleasantly surprised. Every year, more and more studios from across Africa are working on really good stuff. I think we have about 4 or 5 partners in Nigeria now. So, and again, they're all young people just like you guys that took a chance on it. So, yeah, those are our main avenues. I don't know if I'm forgetting any, but yeah, that's it.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. My last question will go to Hugo, which is more of a reflective one. What does success look like for the industry by 2030?
No, good question. So I think first off is my advice to everybody here, anybody who is thinking about creating, everybody who likes gaming as a medium. The only thing that you need to get started, aside from yourself, but your North Star, what you should aim for is what's called a playable. A playable demo is really what you need. Because that's the easiest mechanism for you to show people what your imagination is. To your question, for me, I think it's just continuity. I was speaking to Michael Oscar recently. I was also speaking to Bukola about this. Lagos Games Week 2030. It's human beings that make these things possible. They need health, they need strength, they need wealth, both mentally, financially, to be able to make these platforms possible. And this is something that everybody appreciates. There are kids today who are 15. By 2030, they're going to be 18, 19. And if we build an industry for them, they will come and create. We've already seen the templates already out there. Look at music. Who did it start with? Who started it? Who started the revolution that we're seeing today? And then think about the multiple superstars that we've been able to produce as a result. So our job is just to sustain this foundation. And it's not hard, right? Run an event once a year, bring international speakers, keep showing up and showing what we're working on, not being afraid. You give other people confidence now. Because when somebody says, I can do better than that now, right? Is it not this legend of rich? I can do, my brother does better than that now. Let me come and just come and show it. The good news is that the distribution is not local, it's global. I was speaking to a young man yesterday who distributes his games in Russia. They've got 50 million downloads, right? That's encouraging. That's the kind of stuff that I want to hear. If I look back to when we started the Game of Africa program, my fear, and I'm not one that typically is afraid of anything. My fear is that let me not, like you said, the first generation disappear. Let it not be that they will say the first generation just vanished. Do you understand? What did they leave behind for the second generation? Nothing. Do you understand? So the second generation has to now come and start figuring it out. Let's build the talent program. Let's build the community. Let's build the momentum so that people can just come and show up here and just start exhibiting. They don't need to know the story and the struggle and the doubts that we went through to create it. They can just show up and just start connecting with people from Google, connecting with people from all these places. For them, it's normal. During your time, it was very hard. Today, you can just come and quickly just say, tell me, Xbox. It's not Xbox. One person in the whole of Africa, one human being in the whole of Africa, that role did not exist 5 years ago. Do you understand? You can speak directly to Xbox. It's not easy. These are things that we can now take for granted, and that's my hope, is that we can take those types of connections, relationships. My neighbor just published an Xbox now. They sold 5,000 copies. They made almost $500,000, right? So it's no longer something so that's my hope, that we continue, right? And let us do the Nigerian thing, which is what I love the most. We don't wait. We don't make excuses. We create our own path. Thank you.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. So we draw the curtain here. We don't wait. We don't create excuses. We create our own. Thank you so much.